Welcome to It's Your Break. Hi, I'm Jonathan Mertz, and this episode is going to be a little bit different because we're actually doing this on location, on the set of Always Patsy Cline, a musical created by Ted Swindley, being put on by the Theatre Downstream in Henry County, Kentucky. As a matter of fact, they're at the Henry County High School in the J.W. Smith Auditorium. And I've actually had the chance to actually produce the show there with this theater group, and I've done a couple productions with them. And in just a few moments, we're going to be speaking to a few of the cast members here on It's Your Break. Welcome back to It's Your Break. Hi, I'm Jonathan Mertz. And the show that the Theatre Downstream is putting on is called Always Patsy Cline. It's a complete tribute to the legendary country music singer. It's much more than that because it focuses on a friendship that happened by chance. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that. But joining me right now is Brian Douglas Barker, Charlotte Witt, Laura Adams, and Liza Welch. Thank you all for letting me invade your space here and interview all. So first, let's find out a little bit about everybody. And Brian, why don't we start with you? How did you get started with the theater?
With theater or the Theater Downstream?
Theater Downstream.
My wife is a movie maker, is a filmmaker, has a couple of full-length motion pictures out there. And in one of them, we needed a space. She went to school in Henry County, and she knew one of the teachers here at the Henry County High School, and tried to get permission to use the stage for filming. She got permission. We filmed a scene for the movie in the school, and at that point, we met the theater and music director at the time, Russell Cooper, and everybody just kind of bonded. My wife came and helped with the high school productions. And at some point, they decided that Henry County needed a community theater.
Oh, that's really cool.
So they developed one. There were 4 founding members, and they signed the paperwork, and it is an official nonprofit community theater. The county is good enough to allow us to use their space, and we have grown to 4 shows a year. Mostly on this, although periodically we will do a show somewhere else.
So how long have you been in theater, actually?
I've been in theater since the 70s.
Wow.
So I did I count theater not just in a little high school production, but if it was a full-fledged production.
Right.
I was in the 8th grade, and we did a full production. Back then, they didn't have children's productions of shows. It was My Fair Lady. That was my first full production, and I have pretty much done, except for some time I left for the Navy, I've done at least one full-blown show almost every year since then.
You know, we've gotten to work with each other in the past, too, on a couple projects, actually. And one of the things I found fascinating as you get to find out is that your involvement with this theater since the beginning, you've been involved in every single production.
I have formally am the only person who's physically been in every production, although there are many people who have been. My wife has been affiliated. I mean, she's either directed, but I've been on stage for every production the Theatre Downstream has done, or my voice has been used on stage. It was kind of rough in Steel Magnolias because there's no men in Steel Magnolias, but there was a radio announcer, and I got the part as a radio announcer. So yes, I have done every single show that they've done, but most of the people that you see sitting here have directed or been in just dozens. You got to say dozens of shows at the Theatre Downstream.
That is awesome. What is your current role with this production?
I am a voiceover for the Grand Ole Opry, an announcer at the end. I'm a co-director with Charlotte Witt. Charlotte and I did work together on many shows, but we actually also co-directed Elf the Musical, Thanksgiving of last year. And this is our second time teaming up with this. So I'm co-directing, I'm set designing, and general all-around grunt for the show.
Charlotte, let's move on to you real quick here. So how did you get involved with the theater?
Well, I really started getting a little bit involved and introduced to the Theatre Downstream at the end of their first season. My husband was invited to be considered to be a part of the board, and so we came to the last show of that first season, and he started getting involved, and then I got roped in to be a part of the membership dinner entertainment. And then next thing you knew, they were asking me to be a music director. So I've been able to be on stage in a few shows, but been music director for most of the musicals. I've also been a stage manager a few times. Actually, my first stage managing opportunity was with Laura Adams being my director, so that was fun.
Oh, that's cool.
So we have just come to love the people and the community around the Theatre Downstream that is built with, anytime somebody's in a show, they become a part of the family.
Oh, that's really cool. So what is your background in theater? Do you have a background in theater?
Really, my background is more in music. I have been in a few shows off and on. I was in a couple shows in high school and college, but really music was more my cup of tea, and what I did is what I studied in college, and it's been my love since I was a little bitty girl. And being able to be a part of this community theater has allowed me to use that gift, but also to get an opportunity a few times on stage and then some more backstage.
So in this production, you're co-director and I guess still music director, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, both of those things.
Well, Liza, we're moving on to you here because we worked together on It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the only production we've actually been together in.
Yeah.
And in this production, you play Louise.
Yeah.
And how did you get started with the theater?
First, I'm the exception to the dozens that Brian referenced. This theater, I have a weird inroads that involves Charlotte's husband, Kevin, and my husband, Enoch. Enoch was a teacher at the high school. Kevin is the bus garage transportation director. My dad in retirement is driving bus for Kevin. And between those three and Kevin finding out that my mom, Nancy Ruette, was involved in community theater while I was growing up, encouraged her to come out and audition. So I kind of got to know the people of the Theatre Downstream through my mom and attending her productions. And it's a great group of people. It's easy to be drawn in. My first involvement was, like Charlotte's, I got drafted by Laura to participate in the membership dinner, a little skit that someone had written, an original sketch for community theater. It was kind of poked fun at community theater. It was super fun. It's how I met Brian, and I worked with Kevin and Laura. It was fun. So I've just dabbled since then. I have done very little. I did a little bit of It's a Wonderful Life. I had a bit part in the original world premiere of He Needed Killin' that my mom had one of the major roles in. And I'm from a family of four, my original family, three very extroverted people, and I was the introverted people pleaser. So my mom was involved in community theater, and I just did what my parents told me to. So, occasionally I would get involved, and I did get really involved in high school, and have done very little since then. So this was a big thing to take on.
Yeah, so that kind of just summed everything all up in one that I was going to ask. It was actually kind of a cool way of
answer.
Don't forget the Lemonade Jamboree. You had
Lemonade Jamboree. That's right. Yes, that was a great experience. I got to learn a lot about filmmaking. Ashley wrote a sketch loosely based on a experience of mine during my college years, and
so it wasn't like Van Wilder.
It was similar. It was working. It's called The Vegetable Stand. So that it's kind of hard to get racy with the vegetable stand.
All right, Laura. So in this production, you're playing Patsy Cline. But before that, how did you get started with this theater?
Well, at the time, I was a new teacher at the high school. And I had recently moved back to Henry County. I'm from here originally. There had never been any community theater here in the past. And my mom contacted me and she said, have you seen that there's this new community theater? And we went to, I guess it was the first production of the theater, Moon Over Buffalo. We went to that show, and I was so impressed. I was a theater major in college, and so I've seen a lot of theater. I worked in professional theater when I graduated college for a little while, but I was so impressed with the quality of the show. I mean, and people just looked like they were having a blast. And if you don't know Moon Over Buffalo, there's this scene where there's just this rapid fire entrance and exits. And I knew how much work it was to get get a play that tight and that funny and that well acted. And I was blown away. And then I think the next show I saw was Beauty and the Beast. Same thing. Such high quality. I mean, I get goosebumps even thinking about it. I just couldn't believe how blessed our community was and the blessings that this theater was bringing to our community. And I was not a musical person at the time. I had never been in a musical, except, as a dancer in high school. So I waited until one of the straight plays came around, and it was Arsenic and Old Lace. And I went out for it, and I ended up getting Abby Brewster, the part of Abby Brewster, which is one of the old lady sisters. And it was a blast. I had so much fun. That's where I met Liza's mom, Nancy. We were sisters together in the show. And I've done as much as I can since then, because it's just been a blessing in my life to have this community and this theater so close to home.
That is an interesting story. It's really cool that you got that theater background as well. Seems like you and Brian really have that kind of deep connection there. So that's really, really cool. So we're going to learn about a lot about this Always Patsy Cline. This is something that I wasn't familiar with until I saw the theater actually post it, which was kind of really interesting. How did this production come to be?
Well, really, it was just kind of put on our list of possible shows for the season. And as we started narrowing down shows and considering what might work best in different seasons, what our location availability was, cast size, also thinking about really COVID impacting theater, and people are just now starting to come back out to shows. We wanted to still be conscious of having choosing shows with a little bit smaller cast. And this show just kind of floated to the top of the list for this time slot. Another factor was just some construction projects going on at the high school that we felt like this would be a great time slot with a small cast, opportunity for a live band. So it just won the vote, so to speak.
On this small cast production like this, what's the audition process like?
Well, I'd say it was basically the same as audition process for a large production. You just don't have as many people come to audition for you, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, it's shorter, because when you have a show with 60 people, then you have 100 people come. Well, what's the biggest we've ever had? Maybe 60 people come to an
Probably
audition.
75 or 80.
So, and you're trying to read all these different groupings of people, trying to see who's best. When you're in a 2-person show, there's just a whole lot less you have to bounce everything against. You don't have to have a man read all 7 roles a man could read with all 7 variations that he could read it with. This was basically 2 women in a show. And ironically, I'm looking at Liza. I know this isn't video. I'm looking at Liza because, she talks about her whole family being extroverts, and she's an introvert. And I would dare say this is probably word for word one of the largest female roles I've ever seen in theater.
And it's an extroverted character.
That's interesting.
And I feel sick before every rehearsal.
But we did still have that same basic audition process. They came in. Now, they didn't have to prepare. We actually told them to prepare 2 Patsy Cline songs for those who were interested in the role of Patsy, instead of bringing their own song. We just needed to hear them sing the Patsy Cline and see if you could sing it that way. Where in other musicals, we would have people maybe prepare their own or just sing snippets from the show for auditions. But they didn't know what they were going to read ahead of time. So that was, still that blind reading when they got here. But it was a really neat process, I think, for us, because it was more intimate, because we had less people auditioning. We actually couldn't be in the auditorium. We had to be in the band room. So they have talked about how it was a little intimidating for them because they were closer to us than normal, but it was still a neat process, I think, for us.
And I will tell you, we had a lot of women audition who had lovely voices. The trick wasn't to find the best voice. It was the best voice that also sounded like Patsy Cline. And there were a lot of sopranos who came and auditioned, and Patsy is not a soprano.
Right.
So, you needed at times that chest voice or whatever, the
More
lower
range,
tones. Yeah. And so when you pick a person for a part, it's not always that that nobody was any good. There were a lot of wonderful people who auditioned for the show. They're just at some point you have to select one that was closest to what you were looking for.
Oh, that's interesting. So, Liza and Laura, why did you decide to audition for this?
So, like you, Jonathan, I had never heard of the show, so I was like, oh, I thought it was weird. You know, a 2-woman show. I thought, oh, just different. It seemed different. So I was like, I checked it out and I read about it, and I thought, oh, this is fascinating. And then I found a couple of video clips, and I found both Patsy Cline, who was just naturally endearing, to be endearing. And then I thought the part of Louise was so funny and seemed like something that would be a lot of fun to do. So I was like, I really, I don't know. It was just momentary lapse of sanity. I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
What about you, Laura?
Well, like Liza, I was not familiar with the show, but I was familiar with Patsy Cline. And I have loved Patsy Cline for just about as long as I can remember. My grandmother introduced me to her when I was little. I had a CD of Patsy Cline's greatest hits that lived in the CD player of my car. I'm dating myself a little bit. For all the years I was in high school and college, I love Patsy Cline. And I don't consider myself a vocalist, really, but I am definitely not a soprano. And if I ever wanted to really have kind of a lead role in a musical, this was it. Like, this was my chance. So I was like, with the encouragement of my family, my husband especially, my mother, they're like, you've got to go out for that. And so I did.
That is cool.
It was fun.
So I got a question for you. We're going to switch gears a little bit. How much do you all two know about your characters? Have y'all done any research behind the characters?
I tried to do a little research on Louise. There's not a whole lot out there except that just to confirm that she was a real person. It was a real relationship. So
at this time, I'd like to actually play a little bit of trivia if you're all okay with that.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So, looking at Ted Swindley Productions, who actually did this play, it says that this is about the legendary singer and the friendship, as we said, between Louise. And it's funny because it was just kind of an off-chance relationship that they kind of got into. So the thing is like, she didn't know Patsy very much in the beginning either. So now we're going to find out how much you all know about Louise and Patsy.
okay.
Right.
Okay. What's Patsy Cline's real name?
Oh gosh. I know how she got the name Patsy. It's actually a diminutive of her mother's maiden name. And Cline is her husband's last name. Her first husband, I think. I don't remember.
Her original name was Virginia Patterson
I was
Hensley.
going to say Virginia.
Oh, Patterson.
But she was from Virginia. So I
But
was
you
gonna,
didn't say it, did
I
you?
didn't. I did not. I did not.
When was Patsy born?
30 years before she died.
1934.
Close.
1935.
No. 1932. September 8th, 1932.
Okay.
And do you know where she was from?
Virginia.
Virginia.
Winchester, Virginia.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And she actually was laid to rest there, too.
Oh.
So it was just kind of interesting. Do you either one of you know the honky tonk in which they met? Do you know what it was called?
The Esquire Ballroom.
It is exactly right. And today, that place still stands,
Oh, wow.
but it's the largest gay bar in the state of Texas.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Oh,
Yeah, it's called
my.
Neon Boots Dance Hall and Saloon there. So.
Oh, it has a different name.
Interesting.
So I'm going to make it a little easier here to guess on the next few here because they're going to be true or falses. So it makes it a little
Okay.
easier. You can kind of guess and kind of go from there. In 1973, she became the first female performer to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. True or false?
False.
It's actually true.
It was true.
Yeah, I would have thought there had been somebody else.
I would
before her.
too. Yeah. She really was a trailblazer.
Yes, she was the very
Yeah.
first one. Her greatest hits album sold over 20 million copies in 2005.
True?
It's actually false. It
That's
sold
false.
10 million.
10 million. That's still a lot. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
so she was one of the best-selling album sellers post-death than anybody other than Elvis.
And that's
Oh, wow.
2005.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
It's when
Yeah.
not that
Is that when
long
you had
ago.
it in your car?
20
Oh,
years ago.
yes. 2005, definitely. Yeah.
Her version of Always, which ties back to the play, made the Billboard charts in 1980.
I'm going to say true.
True.
That is true.
I feel like I did read that.
Wow.
In 1957, her song Walking After Midnight hit number 1.
True.
Yes.
False.
Oh.
Yeah.
It actually hit number 2. It peaked on there, and it also crossed over to the pop charts at number 12. Her song Crazy was not a number 1 hit.
It took her a long time to get a number 1 hit, as I recall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say true.
That is actually true too as well.
Yeah.
It's also a number 2 hit. Went number 9 on the pop charts in 1961. Willie Nelson, did he write Crazy?
Yes.
That is absolutely true. Patsy Cline had 4 #1 hits. Is that true or false?
4.
I'm going to say false since you said those 2 big ones weren't
Yep,
number 1.
that's absolutely
Yeah.
right. She only had 2 #1 hits, and it's I Fall to Pieces, and then later, She's Got You.
That's right. Saying the character Louise says you have a #1 hit on the radio,
Yeah.
and
That's
it was
right,
I
she
Fall to
does.
Pieces.
Fall
So I
to
knew that one
Pieces.
was.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite.
That's your favorite.
Well, it's not too bad. You didn't do too bad. So let's go back to the theater in this production here. When is the show going to happen?
Opens July 29th, so it'll be Friday, Saturday, a matinee on Sunday, and then the next week, August.
It's the last weekend of July and the first weekend of August.
Yeah,
That's what I've been
last
telling
weekend.
people.
That's
Fridays and Saturdays at 7 and Sundays at 3.
How much are tickets?
They range from, I think it's $8 to $18, depending on where you want to sit in the auditorium. You can go to thetheatredownstream.com to check out ticket ordering online. We do encourage people to order ahead of time because the best seats are going to sell out first, especially with a show like this. And we encourage people to come ready to have a good time and to interact. That's a really unique thing about this show, where a lot of shows, you're just watching what happens on stage. And in this show, the audience really gets to participate.
Like it or
with-
not.
It's a little bit more like a concert, right? Like when the singing portions, yeah, it's think a little more like a concert rather than a play.
The audience is imagined at the Esquire Ballroom during her show.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. And if people wanted to get tickets or find more information, where could they go?
Best place is to go online to thetheatredownstream.com, and remember, theater is R-E at the end and not E-R at the end.
It's the British spelling.
Yes. But also, posters are starting to go out around town. Banners will be up soon, so that website will be out there as well.
Follow the Theatre Downstream on Facebook, and the
yes.
link to the website will be there as well.
Yes.
Before we go, is there anything else you all would like to add or mention?
I'd like to mention that we're having a full live band. We have only done 3 other shows that have had live music, and the most instrumentations we had was 4 people. And this is a 6-piece band, piano, drums, 2 guitars, fiddle, yay, and upright bass. So that's a really cool addition. And the band they don't just get to sit in the pit and accompany her. They are part of the show. So that will be something new and exciting for people as well.
That is really, really cool. Fascinating that you all have a live band. And of course, we're actually doing this recording in the theater, which is really cool. And the set's getting put together in the background. And of course, it's still in its infancy stage at this moment. But yeah, it's really fascinating to watch how you all put this together. And Brian, I know you have a lot of involvement in that, and I don't know who else does, but how does the set design come together?
It depends. In this particular case, we had to minimalize a lot of the set because the school had some construction going on this summer. I think originally we were planning on doing Little Shop of Horrors, but that takes a much bigger set, and I was not going to be allowed into the space in time to build that and to rehearse in the space. So that was one of the reasons why we selected Patsy Cline, because it was a smaller venue. And mostly, like she said, the band is big in this show. Therefore, the bandstand is center stage, and I'm looking at it right now. It's taken up two-thirds of the stage. So, there's not a lot of room for set. There's a tableau on the right and left, and we like to utilize projection screens in the back. But yeah, it's more of a concert, so the set isn't a standard set you would see in a community theater production.
I'm always amazed with every production you all do around here. So
I did want to mention that with the group sitting here, I'm the oldest one of the 5 of us sitting here. I'm 58 years old. Patsy Cline died 2 years before I was born. Mm-hmm. Everybody still knows who Patsy Cline is. Mm-hmm. Everybody's still talking about her music. Mm-hmm. Initially, people would tell you she's a country singer. I'll tell you from watching this show, you're going to hear a lot of music that's not country music. Mm-hmm. It's pop music. It's rock and roll music. There's a couple of rock and roll pieces.
Standards.
So Patsy Cline sang everything. She's kind of been pigeonholed in the course of history as a country singer, but she was just a singer, and mm-hmm. she was a wonderful singer. And a kind person. Yeah, so something else you find out from here is she was very personable. She was somebody you could walk up to and you could talk to and you could interact with.
That is very interesting. I never knew that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And this many years later, there are still theaters like in Branson and in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge area that are doing Patsy Cline shows. They're every night putting on a show that's centered around Patsy Cline music. So she really is one of those few timeless vocalists.
Congratulations to everybody that's on the show, and I wish you the best. So thank you all for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
This episode of It's Your Break was not a paid advertisement. Follow Jonathan Mertz on Twitter at Jonathan Mertz. That's JONATHANMERTZ. Follow It's Your Break on Twitter at It's Your Break. Subscribe to the It's Your Break podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the iHeartRadio app. This episode of It's Your Break was hosted, announced, engineered, edited, and produced by Jonathan Mertz. And it was recorded and produced at the Spark of Vision Studios. All sound effects and music were purchased through Sound Ideas, Pro Sound Effects, iStock, and Spark of Vision. It's Your Break is owned and distributed by Spark of Vision. Copyright It's Your Break. All rights reserved.